Hi, today I'd like to share with you a trick for using the high pass sharpening filter to add a little perceived sharpness to an image. An example like this portrait here is perfect for when you might want to use that. What happened is it maybe came a little forward in the frame, and so she's in front of the lights. That's why her face is a little dark. But also, if you zoom in here, what you see is that she was closer, her eyes were closer than the minimum focusing distance on a camera. So we get nice sharp detail here on her ears, but her eyes are just a little bit soft. This is the perfect kind of image for doing this particular technique. Now, to begin with, I would go ahead and correct all of these exposure difficulties. I'd update the crop a little bit, and you can see I just jumped ahead to do that. One thing that's worth pointing out is I use the radial filter here, and I started it with the iris enhance, and what you can see is that these are the default settings. It adds a little bit of clarity, so that already adds a little bit of perceived sharpness to it. I also increased the exposure a little bit just to balance that out. So now that we have this, I'll take it over into Photoshop. I always like to do it as a smart object. This allows me to apply smart filters and in a very non-destructive manner. It's very useful for this type of work. When I first start off, I will often add a little bit of sharpen and contrast. This is just a smart sharpen filter and a Gaussian blur filter with a soft light overlay with a reduced luminance. A luminance blend mode with a reduction in the amount of intensities applied, and for the Gaussian blur it's a soft light with down to about 25%. I can talk about those at some other point if you have any questions about that. First step here is to make a quick selection around the area that you want to work. We could just duplicate this entire image, but that's going to make the file size needlessly larger. The easiest way to do it, make a little lasso around it and then Control or Command J depending on if you're on a PC or Mac. I'm then going to change the blend mode here to either soft light or overlay. Soft light is going to be a little subtler, overlay is going to be a little bit more intense, and I'm going to use that just for the sake of the video because it's a little easier to see. And obviously this isn't what we're looking for, so the next step is to go ahead and apply the high pass filter. Now the reason that I changed the blending mode first is because with the preview on we can see a live version of how this is going to look. This is a sticky setting, and it's going to be whatever we used it at last time. I'm going to turn off this background layer here before we really get into it so you can see what that actually looks like without the interference of the background layer on there. It's important that you understand what's going on here, even if this isn't the way that you would normally use the filter. So anyways, again, this is a sticky setting. I would never want to go, say, more than 10, probably not as low as maybe 0.5. It really depends on the resolution of the image and the strength of the sharpening that you need to apply. We're focusing here on the eyes, and we're looking for this nice little embossed effect. I think that somewhere in the 5-ish range is pretty good. It's going to give us a nice strong effect. So we can see that there's good separation here between the fur and the eyes and the eyeball itself. You can also see we're adding quite a bit of contrast here, and we're going to take care of that with a layer mask. So we're going to go ahead and say OK, turn the background layer on, and then I'm just going to turn this on and off, and you can see how we just get that apparent jump in focus. Again, we also added a lot of extra sharpness here, and we don't want that. The whole key to this technique is doing a local adjustment so that we bring these layers of levels of sharpness closer together. If we sharpen the whole image, then we still have relatively soft eyes compared to the ear fur, and that defeats the purpose. Next step here, add a layer mask. I'm going to hold on the Alt key so that we have a black one that hides everything. That would be Option on the Mac. Select the brush tool. I want to make sure I'm painting with white and a low opacity brush. This will allow me to paint it on in layers. If I had this at 100% opacity, I would have very hard edges again, and so that's the kind of thing that we want to avoid. We want to make sure that everything is blended in nice and smooth. From here, I would go ahead and touch up the eyes a little bit, and get rid of some of these little darker areas. That just calls attention to the technique, and we don't really need that. And I'm going to jump ahead here to show you the finished version. So there you have it. You can see that I've cleaned up the eyes a little bit. I also cleaned up this little bit of the background, so that we can kind of clean that up, and that would be the final image. So something like this would be perfect for a using on social media, for example. If this was an adoption profile instead of my own dog, that'd be perfect for that. Let me know if you have any questions with this technique. It works very well with portraits, but it also is excellent for landscapes and pretty much any kind of any genre of photography. You might find this technique is helpful for just making some small local adjustments. It's a great technique to add to your toolbox, and let me know if you have any questions.